Did you know that Sunday is Grandparents' Day? And when I hear the word grandparents, it makes me think about my own parents, grandparents. I was very fortunate in that my grandparents lived in my house that I'm in now. I live in the house that my grandparents were in all these years. And I'm so thankful for the values that they gave me, and I'm so glad my grandmother taught me to make tea cakes. I hope you'll share with me some things that you love about your grandparents, your grandmother, or your granddaddy, and send it to MageeNews.com.
Sunday is Grandparents' Day, and I have two wonderful Christian grandparents, Curtis Smith and Donna Smith. I love them very much, and I'm very thankful for them.
Thank you. This simple song is not enough. Thank you, thank you.
Well, we lived in Pearl when I was little, and all my grandparents lived in Magee. And I remember coming all during times of the year to visit them. But most of the time in the summertime, my daddy's mom and daddy would just take me in for the summer, and I would go with my grandpa, Andrew Bishop, all over town. And he would take me to the old TWL and all the old stores up and down Magee Main Street. And I just thought that was just the biggest deal ever. And his biggest thing was, because I would be begging to go to town, was we'll go directly. And I could never figure out where directly was on the clock, because I always wanted to go like right then. But they loved me very much, and I loved them very much. And they both died before I was 10. My mama's daddy, John Nichols, I never knew him. He died when I was 2. And they were just hard-working, cotton-picking people from Dry Creek. And my mama's mama, Mama Ida Nichols, lived to be 88. And she raised 12 children, and just a good, honest, simple, hard-working, loving grandmother. And I miss them all very much, and I wish I had them here today.
Hi, my name is Ricky Keith, and this Sunday, September the 8th, is Grandparents' Day. And I just wanted to say thank you to my grandparents for the lasting impression that they made on me. They died when I was younger, but the few years that I was around them, they made an everlasting impression. They taught me a good work ethic and to trust in the Lord in all that I do. Thank you.
I grew up right across the street from my grandmother and granddaddy, and he was a doctor. And he had a walking stick. He was a big man. He'd take that walking stick and he'd grab me by the neck and he'd pull me over to sit on his knee. And he'd say, "Okay, tell me about your day." And I would, and I was named after my Mama Stroud, whose name was Lola. And so I grew up across the street from them. And they were just very special people. My granddaddy died, and 6 months later, my grandmother did. And my grandmother and granddaddy on my mother's side were Papa and Mama Van Zant, and her mother had died at my mother's young age, and so my Papa Van Zant had remarried and lived on the coast. My Mama Van Zant lived for just about 8 or 9 years ago, and then she passed away. So I did know my grandparents, but I'm not fortunate to have any of them left. But my grandmother Stroud taught me one thing: pretty is as pretty does.
That's right.
Amen.
That's right.
My grandfather, which was Frank McClendon, had McClendon Stop and Go there in Mendenhall, and I can remember being a little girl and going in there, and he would always have a Coke Icy ready, let me dig in the pennies of candy, all I wanted, and they had donuts, and he would say, "You can eat it, but just don't eat the whole." My Mama Pete, which was Ernestine McClendon, was one of the sweetest ladies that God ever made. He always made sure that we were to Bible school, we were with her, we always went to church. My Papa Honey, which was Hubert Ross, he, I think that's where I get my sentimental side. He would cry at the drop of a hat over anything. Very kind, very sweet, compassionate, and I think that's, I have a love for the animals, and he loved animals. My Mama Ross is Mamie. She is still kicking at 87. She'd probably shoot me if she knew I told her age. But she still fixes the best boiled cookies ever, and my boys love it when she calls and says, "I've got spaghetti, come eat some supper." I was blessed to have all 4 of my grandparents around and still have one, and I love them all.
My name is Maddie, and Grandparents' Day is on Sunday, and I just like it. I like my grandmother and my grandfather.
Think about my grandparents, my grandmother and granddaddy, Minnie and JW, and the grocery store. And everybody that remembers them talk about how kind they were. And they really were. I miss them.
My name is Michael. Sunday is Grandparents' Day. My grandparents are Gil and Linda Allen. I love y'all. Thank you for treating me so good. I love
Time that my grandfather had all y'all. You remember, Diane, when he had all these paper routes. He ran from the bundle papers from Jackson to the coast, and you could never even park a truck to suit him. I mean, you might be over an inch too far or whatever. We was trying to back that van into the carport where he could load the papers up. And, no, it's not right. That's not right. So I jumped out with my temper that he gave me, and I slammed the door. I said, "Well, park it yourself." And my grandmother had just got through mopping, and I picked up that wet mop and I wrapped him around the head with it, and I ran through the front of the house out the back. My aunt lived down the road, and I was steady hollering, "Linda, Linda, open the door," because I didn't know if I was looking for a gun to shoot any minute, because he has been known to shoot guns in some what's the word?
Sanctuary.
In a sanctuary, literally, yeah. Bye.
Well, I was fortunate to know all of my grandparents and 3 of my great-grandparents. And when I remember about my great-grandpa, Paul Hawkins, he was blind. And when me and my twin sister, when my big mama would take food over there, because he was real old, he lived to be almost 102, he could tell us apart by touching our hair, because Donna's hair was real thick, because it was red, and mine was always fine, and he knew exactly which one we wore just by feeling of our hair. So I thought that's kind of cool. And like I said, he died. He was almost 102, and his wife I did not know, because she passed away before we were born. And I knew my grandpa and my grandpa Wade, and probably kids today don't know what sharecropper means, but they were sharecroppers. And if you don't know what it means, you can Google it, and it'll tell you, because I don't have time to go into all that. But they were sharecroppers, and they died when I was small, probably about 5 or 6. But I was fortunate enough to know them all. But my grandpa Wade, I remember he always had a big garden, with both my grandpas did. And I remember we stole watermelons out of his field one night, because we'd never stolen any watermelons. So we got real brave with stealing from my grandpa. But it was funny, because he knew we did it. And my grandmother Wade, she loved to cook, and she taught me how to make dressing. And my big daddy, he farmed too, and he grew everything, watermelons or whatever. But I remember him, every time I see I cry. Every time I see a bed of sugarcane, he grew sugarcane, made his own molasses and stuff. And my big mama, she taught me how to make pie, which helped in the Christmas. But I would stay, we would spend summers with them, 2 or 3 weeks, and I would stay in the house with her, and my twin sister Donna would go with Big Daddy out in the garden, and they would pick and come back and we all shelled. It was just, we bonded, and you don't think you ever lose grandparents or supposed to die, and I think that hurt me so bad when the first one died. That really taught me life lessons. I miss them every day.
Well, I hope you got a lot of time, because I have a lot to tell you. I knew my great-grandparents as well as my grandparents, and my great-grandparent Welbers from Jones County. They were, my fondest memories of them were on Sunday afternoons or Saturday afternoons. After church, we would go over to their house and go feed the chickens. and she always had a baked sweet potato. Granny Stella had a baked sweet potato always on the stove, and as we would go in, they'd be watching the football games, and I'd always smell that baked sweet potato. And my great-grandfather Wilburn, he always wore overalls, had his little snuff, red man, and he always had a laugh that was very contagious. And that's my fondest memories of my great-grandparent Wilburn. Now my great-grandmother Ratcliffe, now she was she just had a heart of gold. And I spent many a weekend in Jasper County, around Heidelberg, with her and my grandmother and grandfather Ratcliffe, and we spent many a time out on their farm with feeding the chickens and cooking and eating and just having family time on the weekends with them. Now the grandmother and grandfather that I was closest to was my grandparent Clecklers from Wayne County. My fondest memories of them was my grandmother Cleckler. She always came down every morning and stayed with me and my sister, made sure we got on the school bus, got to school. She'd pick us up from school sometimes, or she would have supper cooked for us when we got home from school. And Mom and Dad was always at work, and so my grandmother Cleckler was like a second mom to me. And some of my other fondest memories of her was her final days was had a tough time with cancer, and she had to go to Jeff Anderson in Meridian and stay for weeks for chemo. And I would be her designated driver for her chemo treatments at Jeff Anderson, and I would drive her up on Monday morning, and I would only have my learner's permit, but I would drive her to Jeff Anderson Hospital and stay with her all week and bring her home on Friday afternoon after she had her week-long cancer chemo treatments. So she was just like a second mom to me, and it was very hard to lose her. My grandmother Ratcliffe, who is now a Henderson now, she is still living, and I still enjoy my times with her. And our calls and our laughs that we have on the phone. Her mind is not as sharp as it was, but it's still some good memories that I have of them.
Thank you for showing us some love that's true.